My name is Ben. I'm a local marketing consultant here in Vancouver, Washington. So first off, this webinar is going to be a longer webinar. It's going to be 3 hours because I'm not just going to be teaching you how to actually build a website. I'm going to be teaching you and helping you understand how the website's built. That way you can build on top of this foundation and you can actually start updating your website and creating better SEO. So the first 30 minutes we're going to be spending on the marketing foundation. So what that really looks like is all of the different marketing concepts that you need to have and all these mental models you should have about marketing so that we're able to actually execute properly. Then we're going to go over the SEO foundation, right? If you don't understand how Google indexes and then ranks each website page, it's going to be really difficult for you guys to build a proper website. Then what we're going to be doing is taking the principles taught in the marketing and SEO foundation to actually build out keyword research and also website. So this is not standard keyword research where we just use some tools or some applications. We're creating proprietary keyword research. What we're going to be trying to do is build out a model where every single keyword is mapped to the revenue potential it can generate if you're within the top 3 spots on Google. And then lastly, we're going to be using this keyword research to build out a website. As you can see, there's a lot to do in just 3 hours. 45 minutes for keyword research and an hour for building a website really isn't enough time. So what we're going to be doing is using AI to basically do quicker iterations. I'm going to be telling you guys what things we should use AI for and then what things we should be doing manually. And that way, when you guys do it on your own, or if you guys are following along, you guys can make those changes later. But we are very time constrained and I don't have 15, 20 hours to make a small website. So the first thing when it comes to marketing foundation that we want to understand is the consumer decision-making process, right? So the first stage of the consumer decision-making process is need recognition. So need recognition is when the consumer actually recognizes they have a need. Very self-explanatory. So if you get into a car crash, you're going to need a tow truck. If you're hungry, you're going to need to go buy food. You recognize the need once you see the problem. Once the problem is too hard to bear, then the consumer is willing to spend money to solve that problem. And realizing that they need to spend that money is the need recognition stage. Next is informational search. If I'm really hungry, I might think to myself, okay, I can go to a restaurant, I can go to a convenience store, I can go to a bar. I have so many different options, right? And also what food am I going to be getting? So this stage is all about gathering information as a consumer, right? Once you realize that you have the need, you're going to start researching how to solve that need, right? And that might not be, one way. It might be multiple different avenues that they could do, right? So they could go to a restaurant, they could go to a bar, they can go to a supermarket if they want to solve the need of being hungry. Evaluation of alternatives is right at the end of the information search. Once they understand, hey, this is how I want to solve the problem, right, which is maybe go to a restaurant, they're going to try to understand which restaurant should I go to. And they're going to be basing it off of certain criteria. So for me, I live in downtown Vancouver, so I might think to myself, hey, I might want Chipotle or I might want Brick House because they're very close to my apartment. So one factor is proximity, but I might weigh it against cost. Because maybe Chipotle is a lot cheaper than Brick House during its happy hour. And so I'm basically understanding what are the different factors that I'm actually looking at and how much do I weigh these factors and how much does each competitor or alternative actually rank on these factors. Now, most consumers aren't making a spreadsheet when they're going out and purchasing, but that's usually their decision-making process. And then the purchase decision. This is the exact moment that they decide that they're going to purchase one of those alternatives. One of the people who can solve their problem, right? They're going to be purchasing and becoming a customer of that person who can solve their problem. And that is the purchase decision. And then lastly, it's the post-purchase behavior, right? So it's a lot of time to do with, do I feel like I got a good value or poor value for this purchase, right? That has a lot to do with post-purchase behavior, but there's also other factors as well too, right? It's, how do I perceive this brand as well too? Do I perceive them as, low end or high end? Because if my friends are saying, hey, I want to go to a honeymoon, am I going to be recommend them a cheap restaurant to go when in Italy, or am I going to be recommending them an expensive one, right? I'm going to be recommending the expensive one probably. And because I perceive certain restaurants as expensive, I'm going to recommend that one, right? And that kind of ties into the post-purchase behavior. The effects of it is a lot of times to do with repeat customers and also referrals, right? So if we're optimizing for post-purchase behavior, we're going to increase our referrals and customer lifetime value. And as you guys can see, when it came to the consumer decision-making process, there was a flow from the top at the need recognition stage to the bottom at the post-behavior stage. And this actually creates your marketing funnel a lot of the times. So when they understand they have a need for the problem, they're going to be doing top of funnel searches, right? So it might be something like, I got in a car accident, what do I do now? That's them saying, I have a problem, how do I solve this problem? That is a need recognition or top of the funnel informational search, right? So, top of funnel is usually informational searches, and that applies to both need recognition and also information searches a lot of the times. But when it comes to evaluating alternatives, that's a middle of funnel, right? Top of funnel keywords target educational or informational searches. Middle of funnel actually target competitor searches, right? So who is the best option? Those are all middle of funnel searches. Bottom of funnel searches are people who are actually trying to purchase right now. But the consumer decision-making process and the funnel stages are different frameworks. I'm trying to fit them together, and it's not a perfect fit. The reason why is because some people in the need recognition stage might go straight to bottom of funnel, right? If you get into a car accident, you're not going to be sitting there on the side of the road for 16 hours researching. And it's like, well, I might get to it tomorrow. I might get to it in a few days from now, right? No, your car's on the side of the road. You're either reaching out to a tow company, an insurance company, or an auto body shop, right? And that's really happening a lot with like emergency services, right? So actually, if we want to target bottom of funnel for emergency services, you target a lot of need recognition keywords. Also, the post-purchase behavior is not part of the marketing funnel, but it's part of a newer funnel, which people have been going about, which is like the GTM, go-to-market funnel, because that handles like CSMs, but it's not used in this framework. So it's not perfect one-to-one, but usually if they recognize that they have a need or they're trying to figure out information, top of funnel searches, right? Top of funnel keywords, right? Middle of funnel, right, is people searching up competitors, right? Who is the best auto body near me? Middle of funnel, right? And then lastly is bottom of funnel. Those are people who are looking to purchase right here, right now. It's not always a one-to-one, but this is a kind of good mental model to think about when it comes to actually understanding like the intent behind the keywords. And that's where I want to get into last is actually buying intent, right? So like I said as well, this isn't a perfect one-to-one when it comes to the frameworks, but I like applying the buying intent and funnel stage to the consumer behavior process because of the fact that you can see a journey within both of those, right? And so again, need recognition stage, right? If they realize they have a need, like, hey, my friend got a new bathroom remodel and I feel I have an ego disparity, right? So there's a certain amount of ego, right, difference between where I need to be. And because that disparity, I decide, hey, it's worth the money to spend on my ego and actually purchase a bathroom, right? That's need recognition. You're not going to be having a high buying intent, considering the fact that usually bathroom remodels actually have a really long sales cycle, right? So we're looking at 3 to 12 months, depending on how much money they actually have, right? Usually more affluent people, that's seen as a lower cost purchase, so they're going to be spending less money because they're just spending less time thinking about it, right? Versus someone who doesn't have a lot of money and might have to do financing for the bathroom remodel, that guy's going to be spending 12 months, 18 months, right? And they're going to be planning this methodically because it means so much more to them because it takes up so much more of their income, right? So when it comes down to it, right, need recognition, they realize they have a need, they're not going to be doing any high intent searches a lot of the time, unless it's like an emergency service, right? Then need recognition is the best, right, for emergency services. Information search, right? So for informational searches, right, they're just trying to figure out, what's going on when it comes to, potential solutions to my problem, right? That might be certain searches like, how do I get food, right? When you're hungry. And it'd be like, oh, you can go to restaurants, you can go to bars, you can go to all these different places for food. But that's usually fairly low intent, right? Evaluation of alternatives, it's either very low intent or very high intent a lot of the times. The reason why is because evaluation of alternatives at the very end of their funnel of evaluation of alternatives is when they actually decide to purchase, right? So some people don't even evaluate alternatives because they're like, oh, I have my electrician I talk to, so I'm just going to go talk to him. There's no evaluation alternatives. Or they're just going to pick the top choice because it's such a low value purchase to them mentally that they're like, okay, such a low value, I'm not going to spend time. It's a waste of time actually researching this, right? And so they're going to go straight to bottom of funnel. But middle of funnel, MoFu, if you're targeting high intent middle of funnel keywords like best auto body shop near me, at the end of that search, they're going to be choosing a shop, right? So it might be some of the keywords are very low intent, but other ones have very high intent, and you actually do want to be targeting high intent middle of funnel keywords. And then lastly, purchase decision, right? These are people who are like, I need to buy now. Just tell me who to buy from. This is low. Psychologically, it's very low value. I'm just going to be going and just choosing whoever. Tell me who to buy from. That's bottom of funnel. They're just ready to buy. So now I feel, and what are the stages that consumers go through? What are the different stages of the funnel, right? Which is where we're targeting. Because there's the consumer side, which is the consumer behavior process. And then there is the marketing side, which is the funnel stages. This is how the consumers act. This is how we act, right? And I feel like you guys kind of understand that there's stages when it comes to marketing, right? And also there's different intent when it comes to what people are doing in different levels of intent that we can target as marketers. We can target high intent. We can target low intent, right? We can target top of funnel. We can target middle of funnel, right? So we can target all these different levels within this plane. Now what I want to teach you guys is actually targeting, right? Because of the fact that we understand, the different stages, now we want to understand who do we actually want to be marketing to, right? So the best framework is what's your market, right? If your vertical is, I'm in the auto industry, it's like, great. How would you now fit within your market, right? And you want to be comparing yourself to all the alternatives in your market. So if you're in the auto industry, you can be a brake repair shop. You can be a tire shop. You can be a full ATEC repair shop. You can be an auto body shop that focuses more on collision repair. And there's so many different areas within that market, right? And you want to be specializing in that market. So you want to specialize as a brake repair shop within the auto industry. And then lastly, your target market, right? For a certain special, who do we best serve from that position? Because if we're a tire repair shop, we best serve people who are actually, so for market position, right, we understand where we fit into the market. For the target market, it's who do we best serve. So if we're a tire shop, we best serve people who maybe got a new car and want to get specialized tires, right? We can also help people who are in construction, right? And they constantly have nails and stuff in their tires and they need tires constantly. Or we can be helping out just the average consumer who just needs their rotated or to get a new set of tires because their old ones are worn out. So there's actually different target markets we could be targeting from a marketing perspective. And usually, depending on what you're doing, you either want to specialize in one target market and then also change your market position, right? So if you're a tire shop, but they only want their tires rotated and repaired, right? Change your offer based off of your target market, who you can best serve. And the target market, right, is who you best serve. The market position is how you serve it. And you want to be constantly changing these two so that they're more aligned. That way you're best serving your customer. Let's get into SEO now. So when it comes to SEO, you want to be understanding Google Creative Search Engine has been optimizing it for 3 different groups. The first group is the searchers. These are the people who are actually typing in, auto body near me, electrician near me, and all these other different services, right? That is the searcher. Google sees these guys as leverage, right? Because Google's not making money off of these people. They're losing money off of the searchers, right? But they see them as an audience that they can actually monetize, right? The second group is the advertisers, right? These are people who are paying for the Google LSA, paying for the Google pay-per-click, right? These advertisers are basically trying to sell their services to the searchers. So there's always a balancing act of sponsored versus consumers. And the last group is Google themselves. Google has a huge infrastructure cost when it comes to the Google search. They have a offline plane. This offline plane stores billions of points of data and has almost every single web page indexed within it. Google has to be optimizing for these costs. What Google does is it actually stores or indexes your guys' web pages based off of how often it's actually retrieved. If it's retrieved very often, what Google does is they actually store it on an SSD, right? A solid state drive, which is faster storage versus if people very rarely search for the keywords associated with the web page, what Google does is it puts it in a landfill database. This is how they describe it internally as a cheap storage option using hard drives instead of SSDs, which have lower read and write times. So if you've ever wondered why certain Google searches are a lot slower than others, that's because you're probably searching in a long tail keyword, a keyword with a lot of words in it. And because not a lot of people are searching it, it's actually in the landfill. So it's getting retrieved with a hard drive instead of an SSD. Google has hundreds, if not thousands of different patents that they have for this indexing system and the ranking system, which is the online plane. So once properly indexed, what Google does is it pulls relevant pages from the index to the online plane where it decides who to best serve to the customer. And that's the ranking system, right? Who am I going to choose as the best choice, the number one choice, right? Who am I going to choose as the number two? Who's going to be on the 6th page? Who am I not going to show at all because it's not even relevant, right? And that is the whole ranking system versus the indexing system. What is a search query? If you guys have ever typed anything into the Google search bar, which I'm guessing you have, that is actually a search query, right? People always say, oh, that's a keyword. We'll get into what a keyword is on the next slide. The search query is actually what Google uses as the root, and it uses it to basically pull all the related pages from its index database and provide it in the Google search engine recommendation page. A keyword is a search query that a lot of SEO people target, right? So that search query might be very high intent and bottom of funnel, right? And so we want to target that because a lot of customers are going to come through there. Or it might have a lot of traffic, but really high quality top of funnel traffic that will increase our brand perception. And so SEO specialists basically look at each of these search queries and be like, what do I think is best for our client? Now, here's the thing that's a little bit tricky. You know, we've been talking about search queries and keywords, but Google, since about 2015, hasn't actually cared about individual keywords. It cares about search intent. So Google's going to figure out, okay, if I type in electrician near me, am I trying to find an electrician because I want to go apply for a job? Am I trying to learn about the trade? Am I trying to learn about the industry of electricians, right? Am I trying to find someone who can, fix my outlet, right? These are all different intents, and Google's trying to figure out what is the main intent of the searcher and then actually satisfy the intent by providing high quality websites. And then what Google basically does is it actually clusters these intents together within what's called a keyword cluster, right? So this is a cluster of related keywords that all have similar intent, or it has related intent. So one keyword cluster might be landscaping, right? And if you're a landscaper, right, you're going to be wanting to target all the subclusters within it, right? So you're going to want to be targeting the arborist. You're going to want to target lawn care, decks. You want to target all of these. That way you'll have full topical coverage. You want to fully cover all intent within your primary cluster. right? So if your primary cluster is landscaping, you want to target all of the clusters I just named, the arborist, lawn care, deck, planner, and all of the different subclusters within arborist, within lawn care, within deck, right? You want to be targeting all of these different subclusters, right? But let's say you're going to be a arborist instead, and that's your primary cluster. You want to make sure you keep out everything to do with lawn care. You're keeping out everything to do with deck. So you're consolidating your topical authority within your primary keyword cluster, right? Which might be arborist, it might be lawn care, or it might be one level above at landscaping. And so what we want to do to get that full topical coverage is actually have one page target each piece of intent, right? So within landscaping, there's arborist. So we want to be targeting the landscaping level, the arborist level, and every level within arborist, right? So for arborist, there might be stump removal versus commercial arborist, right? And these are two different intents. And then we want to be targeting these intents, and then within these intents, we also want to be targeting as well too, right? So within stump removal, we want to be targeting cost of stump removal or stump removal services, right? So we're targeting the base layer, like cost of stump removal services. So we're targeting that layer, then we're targeting the layer on top, right? The stump removal layer. Then we want to be targeting the layer on top of that at the arborist, right? And if we're a landscaper, we want to be targeting that layer as well too. So we target every single layer, right? And the full coverage of our keyword cluster. What we want to be doing is making sure we're getting full coverage, but we're also not going outside of that. And if we have multiple pages going after the same intent or the same level of coverage, what we want to be doing is removing one of those pages or reworking them so that they're going after their own intent. Because we do not want to be having multiple pages competing against each other. That's what's called keyword cannibalization, and we want to be minimizing that. Now we want to be talking about, okay, now that we understand every single page we should build out, because we should build out one page for each piece of intent within our main keyword cluster, what we want to be doing is how do we actually create the content within those pages, right? So like I said, each page is targeting a certain intent, right? Someone might be trying to find out, hey, what's the cost of stump removal? So all the keywords related to that, we're going after all those keywords in that level of intent. So we want to be satisfying the intent, right? So what we want to be doing is something like creating a pricing guide for the cost of stump removal. Not just the cost for the arborist, how much time does it cost you, right? Because that might be a question as well too. It's still the cost, but it's not financial, right? So how much time is that costing you? How much is it going to cost when it comes to actually cleaning up afterwards? Because they're probably going to make a huge mess. How many hours out of the day am I going to have to hear, the landscaper and the arborist with their, really loud power tools? So these are all questions people are going to have when it comes to the cost of, a stump. And we want to get full coverage and properly satisfy the intent within that keyword cluster or within that page, right? So if you create a page that targets, cost of stump, you want to be solving that as fully as possible. And what that's called is satisfying intent of the searcher on page. So lastly is the search engine recommendation page. If you do SEO, you're actually going to be optimizing usually for one or multiple of these sections, right? For most home service companies, you're going to be optimizing just for the map and organic section, and then maybe some of the Google generate sections, right? Like frequently asked questions. These are all sections that you can be ranking for and you can be targeting, right? And they all behave differently. Recently, there has been a shift from the organic section to the map section. So the map section recently has been getting a lot of bottom of funnel people, right? People with high buying intent. They're all going to the map section. And so Google's actually showing the map section for a lot of bottom of funnel, but also middle of funnel as well too, because that's where it houses the competitors, right? Is Google showing the map section for top of funnel? No. Don't be optimizing for the map section doing top of funnel pages, right? Because it's not even going to show up for the map section. If anything, you want to be showing up for the Google generate answers a lot of the time with top of funnel instead of the map section. So targeting those specific questions that are showing up very often in that section, that's going to be generating you a lot more than, optimizing for the map section where it's not even showing up. Okay, so now it is time to actually do the keyword research and build out the website. So what we're going to need is this. We're going to need any AI model. Like I said, we're going to build all this with AI. And then as we build it, I'm going to tell you what we should be doing manually. We just don't have time for that right now. We need Google Keyword Planner. This is where we're going to be getting our base data set for our keyword research. And lastly, we want to use data for SEO. So Google Keyword Planner is great and we get the raw keywords, but the metrics behind them are not the highest quality. It gives us massive ranges like 1 to 10 instead of just telling us 37, right? It was how many searches happened. And we don't want to be dealing with ranges when we're actually doing this keyword research because of the way we're doing it. And I'll kind of explain that later on. But if you guys want to get a more accurate model, what we want to use is data for SEO. And that basically provides us with the exact data, and we can basically take the exact data and replace it from Google's data set with the Google Keyword Planner. For the website, you guys can use any website hoster. We want to be using custom code. Even if you guys don't know how to code or have never done a website, HTML and CSS is something you pick up in an hour or two. It's not something you guys, spend months or years learning how to do. Very simple. It's literally just writing text. If you guys are doing custom code, some of the places allow you to just enter it in, the custom code. If you guys are using something like Cloudflare or Vercel, where it's a proper, software development website hoster, you guys want to be using GitHub. And then you also want to have an IDE. So I usually prefer Visual Studio Code. So what these things do is Visual Studio Code is where you edit the code. And then GitHub is where you actually store all the code. So all the code is stored under GitHub. And then, Vercel or Cloudflare basically pulls that and uses it as the website's code, right? So we're going to need like the full suite if you guys want to follow along the way I'm doing it. But you guys can use whatever software you guys use, or if you guys want to get another one. But this is just kind of the stack I use.